So the Browns are starting to experience some of the side effects of being a good team. You have a lot of good players, but because of salary cap reasons or money management reasons, you're not going to be able to keep all of those good players. And when that's the case, you're going to have some decisions that need to be made at certain position groups with certain players on your roster. One of the Browns position groups right now that is soon going to be a victim of these circumstances is the cornerback room. Obviously, in the cornerback room, you have Denzel Ward, you have Martin Emerson, you have Greg Newsome, and you have Cam Mitchell, all at cornerback. Now, when you go down the list, you see Denzel Ward, and obviously you don't worry about Denzel Ward when it comes to, money management and contract talks because you already got him locked down for a couple years, so you don't worry about Denzel Ward. Then you go down the list, and you see Martin Emerson, a guy who's a really, really good young cornerback, almost made a Pro Bowl last year, and a guy you're either going to have to pay in the middle of the upcoming season or next off season. Then you go down the line and you see Greg Newsome, who's a good cornerback, but obviously not as good as Martin Emerson. And when that's the case, Martin Emerson is your priority when it comes to either paying Martin Emerson or Greg Newsome. So when that's the case, and a lot of Browns people in the Browns circle have talked about this offseason, you're now in a position where either Greg Newsome is about to play his last year and last season as a Cleveland Brown, or Greg Newsome has already played his last down as a Cleveland Brown. You're now in a space where the Browns are probably likely not to exercise Greg Newsome's fifth-year option because exercising that fifth-year option would probably get in the way of extending Martin Emerson. Therefore, in order to get some value for Greg Newsome before he walks away, you want to be able to, maybe trade him this offseason so you can get some value for him instead of just allowing him to walk next offseason because you're probably not exercising his fifth-year option. And even if you do exercise his fifth-year option, you're not extending Greg Newsome because you really want to pay Martin Emerson, who is your top priority. So with all that being said, we're now in a predicament where it looks likely that the Browns could trade Greg Newsome while there's still a possibility that they keep him on the roster, either exercise a fifth-year option and not extend him or not exercise a fifth-year option and just allow him to play the last year with the team. You're in a situation like that. So you're in a situation where you still could have Greg Newsome on this roster. So when that's the case and when it looks likely that the Browns are going to trade Greg Newsome and when that's the chatter right now, I just wanted to go ahead and talk about the risks of trading Greg Newsome because right now you don't necessarily have to trade Greg Newsome. It would just be smart to get value for him before he walks. But since it looks likely right now that he could be traded, let's go ahead and talk about the risks of trading Greg Newsome. Now, over the last 2 years, the Browns secondary has had the incredible luxury of having cornerback injury insurance. They have 3 good corners, so, if one guy goes down, you still feel incredibly confident about your team's ability to cover well because you still have 2 good corners if one of your guys goes down. In the NFL, any team has 2 good cornerbacks. You're set up pretty well to still cover well on the field. So because the Browns have 3 good corners, if one guy goes down, you still feel really good about your chances to still play really well in the secondary in your cornerback room. Now, this is what takes me to a big risk of trading away Greg Newsome and not having him on the team this year. If you trade away Greg Newsome, your cornerback injury insurance and your ability to feel confident if one of your cornerbacks goes down is pretty much diminished. Not, all the way diminished, but you feel more weary if one of your cornerbacks were to go down due to injury this year without Greg Newsome compared to the last few years where if one of your cornerbacks goes down, you still feel good because you have Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, and Denzel Ward compared to just Martin Emerson and Denzel Ward. And I think a conversation like this is ultra important when we're considering Denzel Ward's health pass. Now, Lord, I'm praying that this year in such an important season for the Browns that Denzel Ward is healthy, not only for his sake, obviously, but, for this team's sake, for their ability to win. So, knock on wood, I'm praying that, Denzel Ward does not have any injury concerns this year. But it's responsible to look at his past and be ready for whatever happens because you know that the frequency so far of Denzel Ward getting injured has been high in the past. So be prepared for it. If you get rid of Greg Newsome, you're less prepared to be able to combat Denzel Ward not potentially being there. So when you look at the fact that, compared to the last few years, we're kind of spoiled. If one guy goes down, we still feel good about our chances to cover well. But, if you get rid of Greg Newsome, you don't feel that great anymore if one of your cornerbacks goes down. And like I said, it's ultra important to have cornerback injury insurance because of Denzel Ward's past. So it's really risky to trade Greg Newsome, not only because you want to have cornerback injury insurance, but you want to have cornerback injury insurance mainly for Denzel Ward. So, given Denzel Ward's injury history, I think it's really important to have cornerback injury insurance. And if you get rid of Greg Newsome, you don't have that. Now, when we're talking about more risks of trading Greg Newsome, I want to insert Cam Mitchell into the conversation because, he showed us flashes last year. There's a lot of Browns fans on the Cam Mitchell train if he were to have to step in as that starting slot corner as a young 5th-round pick going into his 2nd year. And, I like Cam Mitchell. I'm fond of Cam Mitchell. I like the flashes I saw from him last year, especially in the Seahawks game, although he dropped a pick 6 in that game. No shade to him. But, he had a good game in that Cardinals game last year. Jaguars game, he played pretty well when he was able to get the spotlight, although he was kind of injured last year. But you liked what you saw out of Cam Mitchell, and you feel confident for him to step up if he is called upon. But let me say this. Here is another risk of trading Greg Newsome. Are we sure Cam Mitchell, as a 5th-round pick, is ready to step in year 2 as that starting slot corner? Are we really sure that Cam Mitchell, as a 5th-round pick, can just be inserted into the fire out of nowhere? Now, do I have confidence that Cam Mitchell can do this? Yeah, I do. I have really big confidence in his development. But if we're being honest, is it really safe? Will we really be surprised that if Cam Mitchell gets thrown into that fire as only a 5th-round pick who hasn't necessarily had all the time in the world this season, will we be surprised if he kind of flops? The Browns don't necessarily have to trade Greg Newsome this offseason because if you decline his 5th-year option, like I said before, you can still have this be Greg Newsome's last year with your team and he just walks in free agency and you really don't get anything for him of future value in trade and you just let him walk. But if that were to be the case, and this is Greg Newsome's last year, then you give Cam Mitchell another year this season. If Greg Newsome were to stay this year and walk next offseason, then you'd be throwing Cam Mitchell into a situation where he's more ready than he would be this year to step in as a starting slot corner. Maybe you don't like the idea of letting Greg Newsome walk away for no value when you can get value for Greg Newsome before he walks away. But even if we weren't able to get value for Greg Newsome and we just hold on to him, decline his 5th-year option so we can still pay Martin Emerson and allow this to be Greg Newsome's last year, not only do you still get to reap the benefits of having Greg Newsome this year, but if he walks away, you still have Cam Mitchell, and you have Cam Mitchell in a situation where he is more ready, more seasoned, in a situation where you feel like Cam Mitchell is more ready to jump into that starting slot cornerback spot. So that's all I'm saying. A risk of trading away Greg Newsome is, although, like I said, we like Cam Mitchell's potential, there's still a chance that as a 5th-round pick, he might not be as ready, as entertained to just be thrown into the fire out of nowhere, given where he was drafted, given the fact that we don't really know if Cam Mitchell is fully seasoned yet. So that's another risk of trading away Greg Newsome. One of the things, like I said, about being a good team is, having to let go some good players. The Chiefs are primed for this. They've had to let go good players, and they've been able to rely on some young players. Rashee Rice, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis too. They've been able to rely on some young guys and, rely on their coaching and their culture and just all the other stars around their young players. And maybe the Browns are going to have to end up in that situation where they do that with Cam Mitchell. That's the thing. It's just, you're trading a win-now player for a future piece. It seems kind of contradicting, but at the same time, it's what winning teams do. And sometimes you're going to have to rely on young players. That's what the Browns will be doing. So that's just something to think about. But those are the risks of trading Greg Newsome. Obviously, when it comes to the pros, like I said, you get a future pick. So basically, Greg Newsome leaves, but you're able to get something for Greg Newsome as he walks out the door. Like I said, though, Cam Mitchell has a lot of potential. He's a guy that you can maybe believe in to be the starting slot corner. So that's a pro, is that you still have somebody behind that you feel has a lot of potential that could, replace Greg Newsome. You get space to extend Martin Emerson. So that's also the good part. But everybody, you tell me what you think down in the comment section below. Other than that, this has been Malik Hicks, aka the Ranker of Dogs by the Sword, signing off. Peace out, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace.